That's why I did not want to single out any of them, Brad, and I would have supported that on an individual basis and a couple of the others, but we got to get closer to saying, hey, wait a minute, we can't keep funding 30 years worth of funding when we don't have it. And I just have to stand for that at some point in time.
Okay, any other comments or so forth?
I'd like to make a comment relative to that. Amongst my other responsibilities as chairman of the Barrington Advisory Budget Committee. And we have wrestled with this issue of whether or not we have the wherewithal in our town to support budgets. We've had capital reserve funds rejected that have been approved over the years, so we're in a communication issue. But one of the things that is happening at public meetings is the national situation is being discussed as also being directly the Barrington situation. They talk about unemployment, they talk about home foreclosures and things of this sort. One of our challenges in Barrington is to say that New Hampshire is a little bit different than Florida, Nevada, and parts of California. We, for instance, know, it's been published, that our unemployment rate is below 5%, and in Barrington it's 4%. Full employment by national statutory requirements. That doesn't mean that we go and spend like crazy. That'll never happen. We just don't have that character in Barrington, regardless of what anyone else thinks. But we are not seeing the sky fall in. We're going to be extremely frugal. We're trying to do things in a very tight way. But I think we need to look at our region, our county, and I think we need to look at the state as being a little bit different. And certainly you're correct in the grand scheme of things, is that we, at the Washington level particularly, we've got to pay attention to what we're doing. But I think there's a certain frugality that's in place in this part of the world that is in fact different than other places. And I'm going to speak, or asked to speak, on other business with respect to a meeting with the EPA commissioner on this very subject. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? If not, we'll move on to 5.3, gas update. Again, Mark has the limelight.
Oh, sorry, Ed. Can I jump in?
Oh, yeah, sure. Oh, I'm sorry.
I apologize. I wasn't paying attention. STIP Amendment number 4, we were awarded a rather unique grant this year that came out through the a collaboration between the Department of Labor, Veterans Administration, and Federal Transit Administration. It's called the Veterans Transportation and Community Living Initiative. We were one of 3 entities in New England that received this grant. It was a nationwide program. Communication has been kind of light relative to this grant. In fact, the regional FTA office in Boston doesn't really have much to say as of yet about it. There was a webinar yesterday to learn more about the process, and during that webinar we found out that the project has to be included in the statewide transportation improvement program. It's a $324,000 project. I'm hoping that given the way the grant program was developed and awarded, we could include this in STIP Amendment number 4. It is 80% funded through this federal grant program, 20% through local and foundation grant funds that Coast has on hand.
Greg, can you just briefly talk about what happens?
Yep, the project, it's for capital to help create a regional call center that will enable veterans, specifically in this case, to access transportation services, to get to medical services, to get to jobs, and other important life activities. It is also for their families. So and it's not just for veterans; it's also for active military. So if the individual is abroad serving, their families can access these services. The idea is to create a one-call, one-click resource center for them to be able to access these services. This is exactly what we've been developing with our regional coordination effort here in Strafford, Rockingham County.
Any other stiff people wish to speak?
I don't know if we can. We'll try. We'll be in communication with Nick Alexander, right?
Exactly.
All right. Mark will be calling him after the meeting.
Yep.
Okay. Mark, yes.
All right. On November 30th, the second GASSET public hearing was held at the Senate chambers in Concord. GASSET hearing is the Governor's Advisory Council on Intermodal Transportation. They gave approval to the 10-year plan. They made some changes and then approved the 10-year plan to send forward to the governor for his approval, and then it will be going to the legislature. We had a request from some counselors in the, who were part of the GASSET committee to provide 2 lists of projects, and one request was made the day before, 2 days before the meeting, and the other one was made about a week and a half before the meeting, so we didn't have a chance to review projects that we had prioritized with any of our committees here at SMPO, and I apologize for that. It was very short notice. So to go over the list that we submitted, generated and submitted quickly, the second list we were asked for, which was a day or two before the meeting, was to submit our top 2 priorities for projects for our region. And this was in response to a number of other RPCs not getting their top projects and very important projects for the state into the 10-year plan because of funding issues. We had a nice conversation with Bill Watson from DOT, and he gave us some good guidance about this. He let us know that we could potentially submit any project we wanted, whether it was from our long-range plan, whether it was from the deferred list that they made for projects that were in the previous 10-year plan that no longer had funding in the new 10-year plan that they presented, DOT presented, or projects that were in the plan already. Our strategy for this, after talking with Bill Watson, was to list the top 2 projects from our region based on the criteria we used, or that we heard as the most important criteria from the project solicitation meetings. The project selection criteria we had come up with, and also the letters we submitted to New Hampshire DOT regarding project priorities for our region when we were submitting projects for the 10-year plan. We had a large discussion about safety and choosing between projects that were both large safety issues. So we ended up using that criteria, coming up with the Durham New Market Bike Lanes project. and the Rochester Strafford Square as the two top projects for our region. And really the goal with this was not to get them moved forward in the 10-year plan or get the funding increase necessarily, but rather just to keep them where they were so that they were safe from being knocked out of the 10-year plan. There was a little bit of shuffling of projects going on, and we wanted to make sure that these projects weren't deferred any longer. I think both of them are projects from 1998, and it's time they got done. And I think they're two top priorities for the region, two big issues in the region. So the second list we created, we also have the letter here that we sent out to communities and to the TAC and policy committees regarding this process we went through. The second list, New Hampshire DOT asked us to, or actually the GASA counselors asked us to provide a list of 10 to 12 projects for potential submission to their, or addition to their deferred list of projects. So they have their 2013 through 2022 10-year plan, and then there's a list of projects where if funding comes in higher than they're projecting right now, DOT is projecting right now, these projects will be inserted into the 10-year plan, depending on when that funding comes through. So we ended up submitting about 10 projects. A lot of these came out of, again, the project solicitation process, the Route 125 corridor study, and I guess just regional issues that we know we have in our region. So in no specific order, these are the projects, I guess we have the list in front of you, that we decided based on the priorities that we had set beforehand, that would be good projects for this deferred project list. I'm not certain if they ended up looking at this list at all at DOT. They didn't bring it up at the second GASA hearing, but it may be going into the 10-year plan in some fashion. I don't know if you have more information about that, Glenn. If there's any questions about the projects we chose, I'd be more than happy to answer them, but they pretty much did come from the long-range plan, project solicitation, and corridor studies. Tried to focus on safety as the top priority and intersections.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just would like to pass on my thanks. I know as a staff person, I really don't like being asked for information with such short notice that I can't go to the policymaking body or the governing body in my community to get an endorsement of what I submit. And while it's important for me to represent my community, I like to do it through a regular, logical process where people that need to be involved in the decision-making process get involved in the decision-making process. Clearly, this group has struggled with these issues mightily over the last number of months. I think it's unfortunate the staff was put in the position of having to respond very quickly without having the opportunity of bringing it to us for our feedback. And so I just wanted to pass on my empathy to the difficult position that puts the organization and staff in, and express my appreciation for them still being willing to sort of take the bull by the horns and represent our area, so that to the extent that this information gets put into the decision-making process, that we're not left out.
And I agree wholeheartedly. I would add that staff followed a procedure that we've already used and validated through our TAC policy, and that's wholly appropriate. I would fully expect that you'll be put in the exact same or worse position when the legislature takes this up, because the legislature now has the task of taking a document that is not fiscally constrained, coming out of this process, and trying to make sense of it. So it will happen again.
I guess going ahead, some more details about the GASA hearing, the second GASA hearing, where the projects were actually reshuffled in the document. Some bad news.